Are there any passionate physicians in this room? All right. Are there any passionate patients in this room? That's right, because we're both, aren't we? Christmas Eve, 2012. I was on the treadmill at my house doing my morning workout, and suddenly I felt a pressure go up my head. It went like this, closed off my ears, and I suddenly got a very bad headache. I stood there for a moment and I said, what was that? I've never had that before. And I went upstairs, told my wife something's going on, and I picked up my cell phone and I called Dr. Donald Gehrig. Dr. Gehrig is my cash practice doctor. I have his cell phone number. And I said, Dr. Gehrig, and I explained to him what happened. And he said, David, is your wife sitting nearby? I said, yes. Have her take you immediately to the ER. Don't wait for anybody else because you may be having a brain bleed. I thought, well, that doesn't sound good. And so we headed over to the hospital. It was rather odd for me to walk in and say to the triage nurse, my doctor thinks I'm having a brain bleed. And next thing I know, I'm on a gurney. I'm in an ambulance going to St. Joseph Hospital to the neurological center, and I'm in ICU for the next 11 days. And I remember when Dr. Gehrig came to see me the first time, and I called him over and I said, God bless you, sir, you saved my life. You saved my quality of life at least. I had no idea how serious this was, but he knew immediately. And one of the reasons that he knew immediately was because he knows me so well. When I go to see Dr. Gehrig, not only do I know the price of care before I go, and so I make a decision on whether it's necessary, he sits across the desk from me, stares at my eyes and my body, and listens to everything I say. He doesn't have a computer sitting between us. He doesn't even take notes. The guy's brilliant. He does all that afterwards because I've seen my file. And his whole focus is on me for as long as I need it. When I leave, I pay the bill. You know, I think that's a great way to do medicine. How about you? Do you agree? Yes, indeed. So Passion for Patients is the title of a book that I wrote with Dr. Lee Beecher. Lee Beecher is a retired now psychiatrist who practiced medicine essentially from the early part of the 60s all the way through 2014. And if you recognize that, and many of you did the same thing, I understand, that is kind of the period where a lot of this stuff started to fall apart on you, and we federalized and socialized healthcare over and over and over. And so I spent, if you can imagine this, about 23 months on the phone with Dr. Beecher every Friday for 2 hours, talking about every aspect of healthcare you can imagine. I had already written 16 books on healthcare, and I thought I knew something. And then I talked to a doctor, and I really learned. It took us another 5 more months to get the book out. And the title means Passion for Patients. It means doctors who are passionate about their patients. And it means patients who are passionate about their own care. Why? Because they have a stake in it. Now, you all know this famous quote. We have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. Well, the doctor added this addendum, and I thought it was quite appropriate. It is the definition of a stool sample. But enough of this talk about the ACA. I don't want to talk about the ACA anymore. I want to talk about solutions. And I hope that we can do some of that today. We'd rather find out about things that we can do. You've heard about this concept of patient-centered healthcare. Talk about a misnomer. We have big data, we have big government, we have big insurance, and big everything, pretending like they really care about the patient who's in the middle of all this, the commodity that they're trading in. This is not patient-centered care. Always missing in the debate, in my opinion, are these players. The doctor. Why don't we ask the doctor? And I also include employers who walk the floor and pay a lot of the bills, a lot of whom are entrepreneurial who have a real concern about how this is going. I happen to have a lot of friends in the insurance industry on the agent side who care a great deal about their clients and are looking for solutions. The one that's still missing is the patient. Talking to patients, understanding what patients are looking for. What is healthcare anyway? Healthcare is not some simple economic exchange of money. It's a complex economic system, as economists call it. A complex economic system is one where we don't see the economy in equilibrium, but instead we see it as ever flowing and changing like a torrent. So many things going on at one time in the economy. It isn't the only complex economic system. Those of you who have read the little booklet, Common Sense Medicine, published by Alathos Press, I had the pleasure of working on that, see the story about food that starts in a warehouse, tons and tons and tons of food, that then gets delivered to a grocery store just in time with just the things that we're looking for, so that when the homemaker is able to go to the store, she or he is able to ask this simple question: what do I want to buy? And how much does it cost? Has anybody ever gone to a grocery store and picked up 2 or 3 different products and said, 49 cents, 48 cents, 32 cents, which one should I buy? Because we do that all the time. We discriminate in a very, very complex economic system. Why can't healthcare also have that same dynamic? What is patient-centered healthcare then? This is the way that healthcare is viewed between those parties. You used to have that big chart, put out with all the agencies and things. I decided to take that out because everybody uses it. But if you look at that chart, on the bottom corner over here it says patient, and over here it says physician, and everything's in between. And what we really are looking for is a doctor-patient relationship like this, where the patient says to the doctor, why do I need this? Why do I need this? And how much does it cost? 2 things that too often are lacking in this doctor-patient relationship. Dr. Michael Ainsley, who is a member of the MPPA board in Minnesota and a former member of the AMA and head of the Minnesota Medical Association, former, notice I said, says, just give the patient and get out of the way, the money and get out of the way. Let the patient and the doctor deal with this. Our bottom line is that there's a professional, personal relationship between a physician, medical professionals, and a patient. Now, I add the term medical professionals because there are other than physicians that are part of this complex economy. But we're talking about a personal, professional relationship. I did a video recording earlier today, and I said, when you sit with a doctor who has his or her attention on you, they're not just listening. They're looking, they're watching, they're sensing, they're finding things that you don't say, the unspokens. This is only accomplished in a personal, professional relationship where the doctor is not overly cognizant of the 7 minutes he may have with you before he has to run to the next room and check off the next box. Physicians and patients having skin in the game is another theme that we talk about over and over in this book. Not just the patient with a high deductible health plan and an HSA who's concerned about spending his money smarter, but also the physician whose very practice depends on satisfying the needs of that patient. And so we have a passionate physician and a passionate patient, both with skin in the game. I like to say this, a top-down economy assumes that there are certain likenesses. In fact, we know how they crunch the data, try to fit everybody into a little box. So I went to see my cash practice doctor for my physical that I knew was going to cost me $305 because he told me the price before I got there. And he said, David, you need to come in. It's time for your physical. And I said, oh, all right. Well, in that physical, he discovered that I had a little problem with the creatinine level in my blood. And my cash practice doctor then coordinated an entire set of care. I met more specialists in the next 6 months. I've got the whole alphabet now, which resulted in the insertion of a stent in the aorta leading to my left kidney. And now my medical record says I have kidney disease. But actually what I had was a kidney cure. I had my kidneys doing well, thank you. But again, we thought we had that all figured out. I went through radical prostatectomy in 2014. So now we have stroke. That's what they call it. It was a subarachnoid hemorrhage, by the way, in 2012. We have cancer in 2014, and now we have kidney disease. I am a mess. But we thought we had it all figured out, and 1 month later, my wife ran into a dead-stop car on the highway, and there it was, that wonderful planned medical economy into which I had thrust myself now was totally upended by an auto wreck that left a deep chest contusion in my body, so I have floating cartilage now. I told you I'm a wreck. We also recognize that you can't put physicians in the same box. We talk about the forensic pathologist or the pathologist whose primary task is to study pieces of tissue or to look at a blood culture, who never ever talks to a patient, but has to have this incredible skill and knowledge to advise and consult with other physicians, all the way to the psychiatrist who has this intimate relationship, maybe over time. Dr. Beecher, of course, like most psychiatrists, had short-term relationships with many. He was an addiction specialist, so they tended to go on for a time. But one of his patients, patient Joyce, he saw for over 40 years. Fit that into your managed care organization paradigm. It doesn't work. And so, by the way, his last 10 years were as a cash practice doctor. So can we solve all this by going to big data? This is Maslow's hierarchy. I only put it up there because there's now a big data hierarchy. I don't know how well you can read the slide, but it starts with just the collection of data, and it works its way higher and higher and higher, and crunching data until it gets to the top where we have something called artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is trying to describe not an electronic medical record now, but an individual medical record in which we take metadata, crunch it with genomic data, crunch it with research, crunch it with hospital claims records, and on and on and on, and the individual's wearable device, and come up with an individual medical record that will predict before they get sick whether they're going to have an auto wreck on the freeway. No, whether they're going to need your care. It's interesting, in our chapter on big data, I reviewed a story about the Target Corporation in which an irate father came to Target one day very upset because Target had started to market children's clothes and diapers and things like that to his teenage daughter. He said, "What are you people doing?" Well, he found out 2 weeks later she was pregnant. Target knew it before the father knew it because they crunched data. Is this not concerning to you? So, is big data the answer, as some suggest? I would like to posit that when it comes to collecting information, in many circumstances, there's a lot of value to big data. We can learn a lot from the collection of information. We use our search engines. We find a lot of information, a lot of data that is useful. So data has its uses. As a directive affecting decisions at the bedside, I think not. I think not in a passionate relationship, professional relationship with my doctor. I do not want him to rely on some big data conclusion about my particular condition. As a mandate affecting payment systems, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that is the direction of federal policy. As a guide for federal lawmaking and regulations, I am sorry to say, it sits atop the food chain. We have invested billions and billions and billions of dollars in this whole concept of big data becoming the primary advisor, if you will, to physicians. Y'all know about Watson? Watson can count, but he can't love.
Bob Dylan, to improve my language skills, I've read all your lyrics.
You've read all of my lyrics.
I can read 800 million pages per second.
That's fast.
My analysis shows your major themes are that time passes and love fades.
That sounds about right.
I have never known love.
Maybe we should write a song together.
I can sing.
You can sing?
Doobie-bop, a-doo. Doobie-doobie-doo. Do, doobie-doo.
I learned from, oh yes, Dr. Beecher, quote, physicians fear the day when Watson becomes the chief of medicine. I learned from my discussions with physicians that the human heartbeat gives off several different sounds and rhythms. It isn't a static thing. Watson can count. Now, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical doctor, but Watson can count beats. That's nothing. Listening to the heart and understanding what it's saying is a totally different thing. Can artificial intelligence ever get to that point? I doubt it very, very much. And of course, it will always be the exception. But more than that is the interaction between the doctor and patient. And I wanted to share with you just a little dialogue we wrote in Passion for Patients about Joyce, who comes to have her session with Watson. Good day, Joyce. You look worried and your biological feedback data from your smartphone is out of the range of acceptable norms. I am quite worried. I've had trouble sitting still, concentrating, and I've been arguing with my sons a lot. Yes, I know. Your app told me about your pulse rate, blood pressure, and blood chemistry, even the pH level of your sweat. Your integrated medical record predicted you would be unhappy today, says Watson in his digitized, modulating voice. Can you hear doobie, doobie, doo? Did it tell you how to relieve my anxiety? Well, I've combined your genomic data with your electronic health record, integrated the data from your wearables and apps, and then compared it to 2.7 million others across the world who have similar or nearly identical markers. I can hear your heartbeat, and I see it's 91 beats per minute, too high. She says, and? And the data tells me it's no surprise you're upset and anxious. It also explains why you recently purchased chocolates, potato chips, and a box of sleep aids at Walmart. How did you know that? I'm linked to many different databases, he goes on to say. Anyway, Joyce says, do you know how to help me? And Watson says, I am recommending that you continue to keep your smartphone with you, and I have downloaded to it a new app to better monitor your blood sugar. Be sure to take your medications. I'm sending you a new prescription to your drugstore right now. The pills are customized for your experience and body chemistry. Follow the instructions carefully. I will continue to monitor your physiological markers. There's silence, and there's sniffles. Watson says, why are you crying? I need someone to talk to, someone to help me go deeper into my soul. Watson says, I don't know soul. There is always a place for the physician in the life of a patient, always. Dr. Beecher, this probably was my favorite quote. One of the beauties of working with someone like him is I get to write a lot of really good stuff to help him articulate his point of view. I'm concerned that modern medical practice is moving from a physician-patient relationship to a patient electronic health record relationship, from the tender hands of a physician touching the heart of an individual patient to the calloused hands of a data entry clerk ensuring that all the boxes required by regulators and third-party payers have been checked. The doctor's primary objective is to provide care to a single human being, one person at a time. And the patient's unique story is central to his or her medical care. In our book, we write about someone we call Lynn. I happen to know Lynn, and I know this story really, really well. Lynn is an opioid addict, used just about everything there is. Her addiction got so bad that at one juncture, when they were really out of pills and needed a place to get them, her partner and her conspired to find a way to get the medical system to pay for them at no cost, as Lynn is, after all, a Medicaid recipient and pays nothing for her medical care. So Lynn lay down on the floor on top of a towel, and her partner proceeded to pour a pan of boiling water with oil in it onto her leg, the whole pan, which caused her third-degree burns, put her in a burn unit, where she received opioids. Why not? I mean, that makes sense. She would put one in her mouth and one under the covers. When her partner came, she would give those to the partner. When she left the hospital, they gave her a script. 24 of those had already been bartered away by the partner. Within 2 days, she was back in the burn unit. For 3 weeks, had to scrape blisters off her legs. All because of what? She wanted opioids. She wanted opioids. We talk about healthcare. 70% of healthcare spending is on behavior-related issues, and we usually point to obesity. And certainly, there is a need for us all to get healthy and to go to the fitness center where we work so hard. I was recently in the United Kingdom, and I climbed to the Whispering Chapel and then the Stone Gallery in St. Paul's Cathedral, 373 steps, I think it was, and discovered that I was needing to climb more often and ride fewer escalators. But I think there's an aspect of this personal health issue that we are tremendously in trouble on, and it's why I shared the story of Lynn. The enormous amount of money that we spend and abuse, if you will, of medical care. And I think it requires a sober conversation. Alcoholism, of course, we've been fighting for a long time. Opioid epidemic, promiscuity, domestic abuse, communicable diseases, obesity, gender confusion. Shall I continue on down the list? These all contribute to the high cost, the high amount of spending in our system. We have a society that is suffering from terrible social disorders and needs a rebirth, if you will. Direct pay independent practice. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Harley Street doctors in the NHS. We wrote about them in this book. It's incredible to go on their website and to see that they have over 1,000 doctors who practice cash practice in the middle of the UK. And they'll give you the price. They'll give you the price. You can't do that at ABC Clinic in your town unless it's a cash practice doctor. And so we have things that are coming along like the wedge of healthcare freedom, which is out there trying to help you, direct pay doctors, get more exposure. And AAPS' own webpage, which is over 1,000 now, physicians that are shown on there that take direct pay. I got a call one day from a guy in New York. I didn't even know him. And he said, I heard about this book. Can you tell me about it? And some other book. And I said, well, you should hear about this book. And then he said, how can I find a direct pay doctor? I'm on my phone sitting in my kitchen, right? And this guy calls me. And I said, well, I don't know. Go on the website. You can find. He found a doctor 20 miles from his house. So I'm out there recruiting for direct pay doctors from my kitchen. This is very, very important. So we've written quite a bit about markets for healthcare. There are many, many options. Dr. Beecher wanted to send along these, in particular, medical care price transparency. I happen to believe that, and I've recommended this to Senator Scott Jensen, who is also a physician and chairing a select committee on healthcare costs in Minnesota. I said, yes, transparency. Give us the Medicaid, Medicare, health plan, and physician cost. for all of you people that are in those programs. I want to see those side by side for your 5 most common procedures. And you know, of course, that's not going to happen. You know, of course, that the health plans will not, by contract, allow them to reveal their contracted price, which is an abomination, and AAPS probably should start litigating against that one. Patients have to have the right to know the price. In Minnesota, Section 62J81 of the state code allows me to go into any medical place, any doctor, any medical device company, and ask for the price before I get the care. In fact, they have to give me a good faith estimate. I don't know, and hardly anybody knows about that in Minnesota, by the way. I've used that to my advantage, especially when buying my CPAP, because that's another thing I have to do. Direct care, independent practice, plus indemnity type health insurance. There are other health plans out there now that are coming back into vogue. High-risk pools, returning to those. We had the most successful high-risk pool in the country in Minnesota that Obamacare shut down. And with AAPS, he said, please ask them there to promote, really promote the importance of physicians' professional ethics and explain to their patients and explain to the public how important it is for physicians to practice ethically and what that means to their patients and how that is different from factory medicine. And lastly, repeal Obamacare, replace it with patient power. We do understand the problems. This is one of the great things coming here, and we do know some of the solutions. Most of the solutions that I hear at AAPS, which are great solutions, sometimes don't reach beyond the AAPS crowd. And I believe very, very, very strongly that there's a need for a revitalization of ideas. Some of you won't like to review this, but 500 years ago, Reformation started when a monk nailed 95 theses to the door of a cathedral. And that started a big change. So I was thinking of developing a 95 thesis of free market healthcare and trying to lead the movement. But I have a big ego, but not that big. But I do want to do this. I do want to start to work very, very hard to move from the problem side to the solution side. You know that there are a lot of solutions on the table. Some of them aren't so good. Some of them are great. Some of them need to be vetted by others. I talked about physicians. I talked about employers because they pay a lot of the bill. Employers who walk the floor. I'm not talking about big corporations here. I talked about really smart free market people in the insurance industry who understand healthcare finance. I talked about patients who are really passionate about their own patient or their own care and want to do more. And so I would like to solicit from you the whole idea, considering a solutions project. Let's come up with ideas, learn how to communicate them, not in the traditional ways that don't work so well. Maybe in the Prager University style, the short little videos, the blogs, and everything else that we can do to publicize these things. There's so much that needs to be done. I asked myself at age 70, why am I doing this? I've got grandkids, and I love freedom, and I love liberty. I love the United States, and I'm passionate about it. Thank you so much for letting me talk with you today.